Twin Cities News Talk, AM 1130. Davis and Emmer live from Tampa, Florida, the GOP National Convention.
Woo!
Yes, it's beautiful. And we're joined this morning by Ambassador Ken Blackwell, Senior Fellow at the Family Research Council. And Ken, you got a long history, which we don't want to spend a whole lot of time with, other than you've held political office, you run for elected office, you were the Secretary of State in Ohio.
Mayor of Cincinnati.
Yeah, all kinds of credits in your background, and now you're involved with this photo ID, voter ID issue across the country. And, good morning.
Good morning. It's good to be with you guys.
Yeah. Why don't you tell us a little bit about what you're doing and why?
Well, over the past 40 years, most of case law in elections have been focused on the franchise, making it easier for folks to cast their ballots. But in the last 4 to 6 years, there's been a focus on the other voting right, and that is the right to be protected against a fraudulent vote, canceling out your legal vote.
Right.
And so ballot box integrity has been something that I've worked on for the past 6 years.
You know, it can, for me, it goes to this, that, in Minnesota, we're very proud of our turnout. We're amongst the highest, if not the highest in the nation on a regular basis in terms of voter turnout, in the mid 80% range. The problem is you can have 100% turnout, and if you don't believe in the outcome of an election, then what is it good for? And we've had a lot of questions. We've got Coleman, Frank, and race.
Saddam got 96% of it.
I had personal experience, and so does Chavez. I have personal experience from the last governor's race. But, a lot of people tell me all the time, and I want you to, if you would, address this, that this is a partisan issue. There's the Baker-Carter Commission report, which was one of the first reports that really delved into the issue. And, President Carter, a Democrat, and James Baker, former Secretary of State, a Republican, they not only confirmed that, yes, indeed, fraud is a problem in this country when it comes to our elections, but one of the main pillars of reform was voter identification.
Oh, absolutely. And look, the integrity of the 2008 election was called into question by fraudulent activities by Project Vote and Acorn. I do a lot of work with Judicial Watch, and Judicial Watch's investigations and their studies show that of the 1.3 million voter registrations gathered by Project Vote and Acorn, over 400,000 of them were fraudulent.
Well, but why is it then whenever you bring up this argument, we need to have photo ID, Democrats say, there's no fraud in elections. That's ridiculous. It's minuscule. It's made up by the...
Well, and they try to cast it as a voter suppression effort.
Right.
But the facts, again, will fly in the face of those misdirected concerns.
Address some of those. They say it'll keep minority votes down. It will frustrate the ability of seniors to vote and disable. Address those.
Well, look, in 2004, Georgia, a southern state that had a history in terms of slavery and the black codes and etc. But Georgia had a turnout of Hispanic voters of 18,000 in 2004, and black voters 834,000. They implemented a voter ID law in the state of Georgia. Everybody said this was voter suppression. This was geared to suppress the black and Latino vote in particular. Well, in 2008, the Latino vote went up from 18,000 to 19,000.
And this is in Georgia?
In Georgia. But more importantly, there was an increase of the black vote of 42%. A 42% increase.
Same thing happened in Indiana, right?
You're right. And that's because...
Not necessarily the same numbers, but still.
That's because in American culture and in American life, having an ID is nothing that's burdensome. We have an ID for a driver's license. If you want to get a
Library.
A library book, right? If you want to receive a medical license, right? So this is not that burdensome. But we must understand that what the Democrats and the left in particular are doing is using this notion of voter suppression to gin up anxiety in their base. They're trying to convert this legitimate effort to protect the integrity of the ballot box into a way to mobilize their base by mischaracterizing it as an attempt to throw us back into Jim Crow,
Right.
the
Especially
Jim Crow era. Right.
The thing is, this might actually help Democrat candidates if it does increase. I mean, if it's supposedly true that, and we know it's not true, that Hispanics and blacks, quote, vote in blocks, unquote, but if it is true that they vote for Democrat candidates, right, then it might help them, Democrats too.
What we see in Georgia and Indiana and in other states, in Texas, they use it as a voter mobilization and voter turnout mechanism by mischaracterizing it as an attempt to suppress their vote. They find out that it's very easy to get them the voter ID. They find that it is very easy to make sure that they get to the polls. And once they get to the polls, if they cast their ballots, they cast their ballots for their team.
You know, I got to tell you, we got a great story in Minnesota that nobody wants to talk about. Our Secretary of State, who's opposed to any of these photo ID reforms, said there isn't a problem with fraud and this is voter suppression. And it turns out that he had an employee working in the Secretary of State's office under a false identity for quite some time.
For years. And here's another one. He'll say, well, what about the military people? This is going to suppress votes by people in the military. And of course, you know, today, especially with people serving, that's a big issue. You know, how does photo ID relate to or is a problem with absentee ballots and people in the military?
Well, it doesn't. And if the Obama administration and the Obama Justice Department was really concerned about the military having the opportunity to cast ballots, they would in fact work overtime to make sure that those folks on active duty, you know, had all of the conveniences to make their votes, make sure their votes count.
But I mean, what's the procedure? So let's say I'm in Kuwait. What's the procedure if I want to vote?
Well, one, you can vote by mail,
right?
And so I get an absentee ballot from
and they should be able to execute the ballot and get it back. But let me tell you what happened in 2008. The mail was delayed, and a lot of votes of military people on active duty didn't get counted. You know, it would seem to me that the Obama Justice Department should be expressly concerned about those folks who are, you know, that are laying their lives on the line for us to make sure that they get to participate in the advancement of electoral freedom.
I have one more question that I think a lot of people baffles them. We had the Georgia law, we had the Indiana law. They were two of the most visible within the past 4 or 5 years. They went all the way to the United States Supreme Court, and they were both upheld with the Supreme Court affirming lower courts and saying, you know what, you say it's so, but there's no evidence of any of this voter suppression. We don't think this is an unreasonable requirement. Therefore, we're going to uphold them. Then you've got all this data after that shows that voter turnout increased. Now you've got these lawsuits sprouting up all over the place. Pennsylvania is the one that comes to mind. And just a couple of weeks ago, a lower court judge, Commonwealth judge, actually denied the challenge. Now it's going up on appeal. Why do we keep having all these lawsuits? And
because they're trying to litigate.
If it's been determined by the U.S. Supreme Court, why do we keep going back?
Well, there are about 14, 15 states that are subjected to Section 5 of the Voting Rights Act.
It's a civil rights.
Which means that the Justice Department has to give its okay, and Holder is refusing to give its okay. He's challenging it. He's racialized it, and that's a problem.
Well, Pennsylvania's not. Is Pennsylvania a Title V state?
I don't think that was the issue.
No.
there.
That's not the issue there.
Right.
That was challenged in civil court.
Right. And that one was just the same thing as the Georgia and Indiana laws. The judge literally said there's not enough evidence that you're inflating your numbers of people that don't have IDs.
Right.
Ken Blackwell, thank you so much.
Good to be with you guys.
Really appreciate it. Have a great convention.
Keep the fight.
We'll talk to you. We're going to have some fun at the convention. We're live from Tampa.